Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here. In today's video, I'll be talking about the possibility of the Washington Commanders drafting a defensive end at pick 16 and give you guys an update on some of the players they're meeting with. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content. So for a while now, some of these reporters have been hinting at the possibility of the Washington Commanders drafting a defensive end in the first round. Maybe not at 16, but maybe in a trade back scenario, or if someone who they have as like a top 10 guy and is an edge rusher, if he's there at 16, maybe they take him. John Keim hinted about this maybe 2-ish weeks ago on his podcast. Ben Stanig has kind of been hinting at it as well. Today he reported, and a lot of people reported, that the Commanders are hosting Clemson defensive end Myles Murphy for a top 30 visit, and he wrote a little bit down the under the tweet, says, wrote about edge being a sneaky position at 16 because of the Chase Young Montez Sweat uncertainty, and the uncertainty as well. Montez Sweat, this is his last year under contract, and Chase Young, they haven't picked up his 5th-year option. If they do pick up his 5th-year option, he will be under contract for the 2023 and 2024 season. If they don't pick up his 5th-year option, it'll just be the 2023 season that'll be under contract. So they could both be free agents after this year, which is just crazy if you think about it, because it seemed like just yesterday that Montez Sweat was drafted and Chase Young. I cannot believe that he's entering his 4th season, and part of that is because he's only played one full season for the Commanders, and that was his rookie year where he played really well, and then after that kind of disappointed. The next year got hurt, and then didn't really play much at all last year. So we'll see what happens there with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I kind of talked about it yesterday in my video talking about the off-season workouts, day one of that, and Chase Young being there, some of the health updates and stuff like that. So go ahead and check out that video when you guys are done with this one. But they're meeting with Myles Murphy for a top 30 visit. He's a DN that's going to be drafted in the first round. Dane Brugler, who is a NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, has him as his 21st overall prospect. He'll probably be in that 15 to 25 range. The Commanders possibly could draft. I'm gonna get into Myles Murphy in the background on him as well. And some other news: the Commanders are also meeting with quarterback Hendon Hooker today. It was reported it was yesterday, but I guess it's happening today. Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, believe out of Oklahoma. And then Myles Murphy, of course, talked about that, defensive end out of Clemson. I think they're also meeting with Illinois defensive back Jartavius Martin. So they've met with 2 Illinois defensive backs in Devin Witherspoon, Jartavius Martin. Devin Witherspoon's going to be a first-round pick, possibly could be there at 16 for the Commanders. Jartavius Martin, on the other hand, he's the guy that it'll be like a 3rd or 2nd round guy. He'll be a day 2 guy versus, his teammate Devin Witherspoon will be a first-round guy, and we'll be lucky, very, very lucky, if he's there at 16. If he's there at 16, you run and turn in that card. There's nothing else to say, unless Christian Gonzalez is there, and then you would take Christian Gonzalez. But there's zero chance that Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon are there with the Commanders picking. I tweeted today, and I'll go ahead and go to that tweet, I guess, in a bit. Let me just go to that tweet. I was talking about the guys that I would like the Commanders to draft. If they're, if these guys are there at 16, I would run in and take the card with Peter, offensive tackle to Northwestern, Gonzalez, cornerback out of Oregon, Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois, Deonte Banks, another cornerback, Brian Branch, Paris Johnson. You guys all know these names, so I don't have to get into it too much. If those guys are there, I'm happy taking any of those guys. Deonte Banks might be a little bit of okay, if you think he's going to be there in a trade back scenario, then I would be okay with that as well. And my guy John asked what's wrong with Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Wright. Well, Joey Porter Jr. might be a little bit more of a scheme. He might not be the best scheme fit, but if they feel like it's fine and he can play zone at a high level, then okay. Go ahead and take him at 16. I think he's going to be there. Darnell Wright, I'm okay taking him at 16, but I'd rather trade back and get him. I think that's better value because there's a lot of guys that I think if we trade back, there'll be like 3 to 4 guys that I really like, and Wright would be one of those possibilities if we trade back. But at 16, I just don't love the value there. I don't love the value there, of Darnell Wright. But Peter Skronowski out of Northwestern could play tackle, guard, whatever for you. He's a really good prospect. Paris Johnson, same for him. And then Brian Branch is another guy that maybe you can get him in a trade back scenario as well. But I think he fits a lot of what the Washington Commanders want to do. Can play buffalo nickel, can play slot for you. So I like him. And then I don't have to explain Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez. Those guys are elite cornerback prospects. So that's kind of my thoughts on the guys that I would take at 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any of these guys are there at 16 and we take them, I'm very, very happy with what we do. And if we trade back and take one of these guys, I am ecstatic. Also, guys, real quick, make sure you guys check out Man to Mask. They're a great sleep mask company, and they sent me a mask a couple weeks ago. Been using it almost every night, and it's helped out my sleep tremendously. They have a bunch of different sleep masks. There's a normal one. They have a sound one with a speaker system. They have ones that you can change the temperature. So make sure you guys check them out. Link in the description. Use code HTTC for 10% off. So now back to the video. So let's talk a little bit about Myles Murphy, who the Commanders are, meeting with for a top 30 visit. He's 6'5", 275 pounds, from Georgia. You look at his stats, not insanely impressive, but, the last couple years he's, had 7 and 6.5 sacks, couple forced fumbles in the last 2 years combined, had 3 forced fumbles in 2020. So nothing crazy, but solid numbers for sure. And he's got a good build, 6'5", 275 pounds. Like, that's what you want in a DN. And he actually slimmed down a little bit for the combine, got to 268. So didn't run or do any of the vertical jumps or anything, but he did bench press 25, which doesn't seem that. I mean, that's obviously I can't even come close to doing that. But in terms of DNs, that seems probably about average, maybe above. Actually, that might be a little bit above average. Not completely sure. I think the combine high was 38, and that was an offensive lineman who tore his ACL. I believe that's the case. So 25 is actually pretty good. And his NFL comparison is Antoine Odom. You look at some of his strengths. Actually, I'll read the overview because I don't know a ton about Myles Murphy. So he's excellent size and traits, which we talked about, and he's been consistently productive in impact categories for 3 straight years. He plays with a plus motor and good first step quickness, but his game isn't very twitchy. He has finishing talent when he's inside the pocket, but he needs to vary his rush angles and find an effective inside counter, as NFL tackles will be expecting his long arm bull rush technique. Murphy's length and post-up strength could provide the scheme and positional versatility that puts him on every draft board. The traits and upside are there, but his skill level needs a boost to push the ceiling higher. And hey, if the Commanders draft him, he's not going to have to play a ton right away. But that's, I don't know. For me, I'm just very, very against the idea of drafting an edge in the first round. Unless, if you're trading Montez Sweat, okay, go ahead. Because you trade Montez Sweat, maybe you get a second-round pick. Maybe a team throws up a first. I doubt it. But you're probably going to get like a second-round pick and maybe a little bit more because of his potential. And he's had solid sack production. Then you can go ahead and put your guy in there. But I'm not drafting a D-end in the first round when you have 2 guys that were first-round picks ahead of him that are extremely, extremely talented and have showed flashes of being elite pass rushers, and draft a guy that might only play 25-30% of the snaps. If you're a first-round pick, I need you playing almost all of the snaps. Like, I didn't like the Therian Mathis pick last year. For me, this would be much, much worse. So if you're going to trade Montez Sweat when you draft him, that's different. But if you plan on keeping Montez Sweat and Chase Young, I'm sorry, this should not even be discussed, because you have other positions where you actually have needs right now. Like, I just don't like when people try to overthink things. Like, I like Ben Standig, but that's what he's kind of doing here, and he's trying to push this. Like, he says the Washington Commanders should do this. I don't know. I swear I saw that tweet somewhere, but it just, I think they're overthinking things right now because, yes, maybe down the line we're going to need an edge rusher, but that's a year or two away. Right now, we need guards, we possibly need tackles, we need tight ends, we need linebackers, we need cornerbacks. We do not need edge rushers right now. Maybe a third or fourth round guy that, I mean, we could use edge round depth, or we could use edge depth. But you're not drafting for depth in the first or second round, sometimes not even the third round. You want starters within the first couple years, you know, in that third round range. And in the first and second round, you want starters, the guys that'll start year one. So if there's a guy that's really, really talented and, you know, you have him super highly on your board, well, the chances are other teams will have, you know, them high up on their board as well, and you can trade back and get a good player. I do believe in somewhat in the best player available strategy for drafting. I think best player available at position of need. So you don't need to go like, oh, just one position need. Put out like 3, 4, 5 positions of need, and then out of those needs, whoever's your best player on the board, go ahead and take them. So for the Commanders, it'll probably be cornerback, tackle, guard / center, and then maybe linebacker. I mean, I said corner if I didn't corner, and then tight end maybe. Those guys. So out of those guys, whoever's their top player at 16, that's who they'll take. Like, obviously, you know, best player available, if you have an amazing quarterback and your best player available is a quarterback and he's in the prime of his career, you're probably not taking him. Like, it just like Patrick Mahomes, if the Chiefs had the first overall pick, they're not taking Bryce Young. They're trading back. So that's what the Commanders could do, trade back if one of these guys is there that is really talented. I just don't think it makes sense. I would be like the Fedarian Mathis pick. I didn't like that, but at least there's like a little bit of like an understanding there with like, okay, you thought maybe you're going to lose Daron Payne that season, even though they didn't. And it's a little different when it's the second round and you didn't have any depth there because Tim Settle left, or you know, you decide to bring him back. You release Matt Ioannidis, and you just had no depth there at all. I still do not agree with the pick at all, but they have some okay depth there with Efe Obadi, who had like 5-6 sacks, and then Casey Toole and James Smith-Williams are solid players. So I think they need another guy there, but I think third or fourth round is better than first round when they have far greater needs, and drafting a DN in the first round for the Commanders would be a huge luxury. Like, I have been against drafting a running back in the first round in Bijan Robinson, but I'll draft Bijan Robinson over Myles Murphy any day of the week just because I don't think it makes sense at all for the Washington Commanders. But he's a good play. Like, I'm not trashing on Myles Murphy. He's a good player. He's probably going to be a good player in the league. I'm trashing on the idea of the Washington Commanders selecting him or any edge rusher in the first, even second round of the draft. But second round would be more understandable. And real quick, going back to Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma, I believe, and last tackle out of Oklahoma we had was pretty good. You know, this is the guy projected in the like late first round. I've seen some early second. It's a guy I could see the Commanders reaching on and taking him at 16. Seems like he would be a good fit, but this is another guy, trade back, and maybe we'll talk there, but 16 is a little bit too early. But, you know, offensive line or cornerback or, you know, DB would be a good pick for the Commanders at 16 or trade back in the first round. That's what I want. And if you trade back and you're in the late first, then we can talk about maybe you can draft if, you know, Bijan Robinson is somehow there like at 25 or a tight end or something like that. But as you know, that's kind of my take. I still would prefer a cornerback or DB. And yeah, so that's it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys new, and peace.